As the nation nears her 250th anniversary next month, Judy Woodruff reports on how old questions about faith and the founding are once again being pushed to the forefront. It's part of her series, America at a Crossroads.
On a Sunday morning last month, the National Mall in Washington was converted into a place of worship, with Christian rock bands belting hallelujahs. The crowd demonstrating their devotion.
If being a Christian nationalist means loving Jesus Christ and loving America, count me in.
And a roster of speakers, most of them evangelical Christians, calling on Americans to consider the divine hand guiding our country through its history.
Trusting the Lord is how America came into being. Washington knew it. John Adams knew it. They all knew it. Even Benjamin Franklin knew it.
This was Rededicate 250, a day of prayer, praise, and thanksgiving organized by Freedom 250, the public-private partnership launched by the Trump White House to coordinate its anniversary celebrations.
Thus Solomon finished the house of the Lord.
President Trump appeared in a previously recorded video to read a Bible passage.
Then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land.
How many of you love Jesus?
Many of his cabinet officials and allies on the Hill appeared as well.
In this 250th year of American independence, we hereby rededicate the United States of America as one nation under God.
And the morality and religion that formed the American consciousness were decidedly Christian, founded upon the principles and the divinity of Jesus Christ.
I love our president. I love his cabinet.
I spoke with visitors who had traveled a long way to be there and who voiced little doubt about their Christian faith and our shared history.
Do you believe that the founders intended this to be a Christian nation?
Absolutely. Our nation was founded on a Christian doctrine.
I believe our founding forefathers were Christian men who loved God, and that's why God made a covenant with this nation.
The country needs to return to the Lord, to not just say that He is Lord, but that He would genuinely be who dictates, who makes the decisions.
America is built on the Christian faith. So right now, if we lose this faith, the whole country will collapse.
I love President Trump. I love what he's doing. I love this event. It's a great honor to bring back Jesus into this nation because America needs Jesus.
While clearly passionate, the people who gathered that day aren't alone. A 2022 Pew Research survey found that 60% of Americans said they believe the founders originally intended for America to be a Christian nation, while 45% said they believe the country should be a Christian nation.
In some ways, this question, was America founded as a Christian nation, is really about the present, not the past.
Historian John Fee has been studying and writing about this question for a long time.
This is a really interesting Anglican church because here in Philadelphia, the Anglicans were split between patriotism and loyalism.
We met at Christ Church in Philadelphia, where some of those founding fathers, including George Washington and John Adams, attended services.
And this is where Washington and Martha, sometimes their family, Martha's children, would come and worship.
This year, Fee is releasing a third edition of his book, In God We Trust, Was America Founded as a Christian Nation? It serves as a primer for readers interested in a historical assessment of the faith of the founders, the ways they thought about religion and public life, and how these questions have persisted throughout our history.
Every founder brought their own sort of religious beliefs to bear. In some ways, talking about the founders' personal religious convictions is very unhelpful because sometimes their religious convictions do not necessarily always translate in the way that they thought about the relationship between church and state.
For example, George Washington was an Anglican who reportedly abstained from taking communion after the Revolution. While he wrote often of providence, Fee says he rarely mentioned Jesus Christ. John Adams was a Unitarian, rejecting the notion of the Trinity, and was fiercely anti-Catholic. Thomas Jefferson was a skeptic who created his own Bible that removed all references to miracles in the New Testament. And though some lauded the role that religion could play in building a new country, they also believed there should be no established religion or religious test for federal office.
These were all radical ideas, new ideas in the Western world. There had been no country that had been built upon these radical ideas of separating church and state, of religious liberty, of religious freedom. And they saw all of the dangers, especially persecution of minorities, religious minorities, and they wanted a nation built on religious liberty.
And how strongly do they feel about that?
Well, every founding father would have embraced that idea. There was really very little dissent at all on that question.
Even as the Freedom 250 event in Washington gained national attention last month,
God bless America.
Another group, Faith 250, has been quietly meeting in churches, synagogues, and mosques in Northern Virginia for the past year to discuss historical texts across lines of faith, the Declaration of Independence, the New Colossus, the poem found on the Statue of Liberty, and the writing of Frederick Douglass. Rabbi Michael Holzman founded Faith 250.
The idea of America, the narrative of America, the identity of being an American has always been aspirational, and it's always been connected to a vision for humanity, right? And so we just turn to our different religious traditions to find the ways that we can talk about our vision for humanity and our vision for this country.
Now, thank you all so much for getting to your tables.
Rizwan Jaka has been working within the interfaith community for decades in this area.
As an American Muslim, it takes me back to where estimated 1/3 of enslaved Africans that were brought here were of Muslim descent. And so the foundings of this country also had Muslims that were a part of it in that journey, right? Obviously coming from the foundings, and how do we continue to create a more perfect union to live up to those ideals.
Miranda Hovemeyer is a humanist chaplain at American University. She doesn't identify with any faith tradition, something she shares with more than a quarter of the country.
You need to be able, as an American, to follow your personal conscience. And that is a really important founding principle of the United States, because we're acting out in reaction to coming out of a place where church and state were not separate, and a big value that we are trying to impart on this democracy going forward is that each human being has freedom of conscience to choose what is the right path for them in their own spiritual belief and development.
Let your Holy Spirit descend upon this land.
John Fee says that this tension between claims of a Christian founding and a tradition of religious freedom and what they should mean for public life has shown up throughout our nation's past.
At every moment, whenever there is social, demographic, cultural change, there's always a backlash. You could call it nativism, but there's always a backlash to try to preserve what the population believes America is all about.
Yet, as an evangelical Christian himself and a historian, he says one needn't choose between God and country.
But for me, Christians believe that they're a part of the kingdom of God, an alternative kingdom, right? A kingdom that transcends nations and these kinds of things. So what does it matter, whether or not America is founded as a Christian nation for a person of true Christian faith? In other words, I do not tie my personal faith to American identity in any way, shape, or form. And I hope I'm willing to speak out against my country when it has to, as a patriot and a Christian, speak out against my country when necessary, as well as praise it for the good things that it's done.
God bless America.
For the PBS News Hour, I'm Judy Woodruff in Philadelphia.
God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News. Donate now, or even better, start a monthly contribution today.